All right, welcome everybody. We're just going to give it about 30 seconds for the room to fill, and then we'll get started. Okay, why don't we get rolling? I think this is a good turnout. So welcome and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the third session in the Geothermal Heating and Cooling webinar series. I'm Scott Stone of Glencoe Strategies. I'm the host of the series. So far, with the prior two webinars, we've looked at the big picture, how geothermal systems save energy, strengthen the grid, and offer reliable solutions for homes, for businesses, and for electric utilities. Today, we are getting into the human side of the story, the jobs, skills, and economic opportunity offered by the industry for everyday Americans. Geothermal heating and cooling is growing, but scaling it nationwide isn't just about the technology, it's about the people, the drillers, the installers, the manufacturers, the folks that are building this industry from the ground up, quite literally. We're going to hear from leaders who are creating real training pathways, hiring across rural and urban areas, and helping workers, some coming from oil and gas, to build family-sustaining careers in this sector. This is a space where economic development, workforce growth, and American energy dominance all come together. I hope that you'll walk away with a better sense of not only where the industry is headed, but who's powering that growth and how we can support them. I want to say a big thank you to Mission Geo, to IGSPA, and to the Geothermal Exchange Organization for making this series possible. Mission Geo is an independent initiative of the Geothermal Exchange Organization, fostering awareness and use of geothermal heating and cooling technologies. And IGSPA, of course, is a nonprofit trade group founded in 1987 to support the geothermal heating and cooling industry. So with that, let's start with our first panelist, Colt McCarthy. Colt, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Colt, let's start with who you are, what you do, and where you're based.
Yes, my name is Colt McCarthy. I'm the CEO of Republic Drill Co. We are a 40-year-old family organization who has been delivering water well, geothermal, mining, shallow oil and gas drilling equipment to the areas in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, California, and now Connecticut.
It's a good spread. So how would you describe, what the current labor demand is in your corner of the industry, particularly in drilling?
Even before today, I've been told many times in the last decade that if you could supply a driller with your drill, I'd buy another drill. It seems to be that the labor shortage is always an issue when it comes to expanding a company's drilling fleet. And particularly with the demand of geothermal, it's no exception.
Yeah, so as the industry continues to grow, what are the skills and roles you believe will be in highest demand? Kind of unpacking your comment about the showing up with a drill. Tell me more about that.
It's a lot more than just the person on the drill as we continue to scale this industry, because planning the project and establishing what method you're going to choose to drill a project takes someone with a lot of tenure, and that's not someone who can be easily trained in any program. So we're going to need to maintain the higher skilled veteran drillers that can advise and equip a drilling team to show up on site and execute the project appropriately. And so from the training standpoint of someone that's assisting the driller, someone that is operating the drill safely and effectively and efficiently, to the person who's also maybe managing multiple sites to make sure that the drilling crews are being productive and meeting the drilling goals for the project.
And thinking about the veteran drillers, keeping them in the industry, what do you feel you need to see in order to continue to, feed the guys who really know what they're doing, have a lot of good experience, are capable of doing more?
I think we need to give them the capacity to put their knowledge into other drillers. We have in our company to to pass on the knowledge, to make sure that that knowledge is captured and transferred to the next generation. Because for the longest time, very few people have been doing the work of many, and so we really rely on people that are very experienced, and we push them very hard to cover many projects, many drillers, and we need to be able to find ways to capture that knowledge and pass that on to the next generation.
So, Colt, the geothermal heating and cooling straddles, energy and infrastructure sectors. How do you prepare, new drillers and others new to the workforce in order to operate safely and efficiently in this space?
I think the oil and gas has done a good job at setting safety standards over the last decade. You've really seen that culture shift. Different companies have different safety cultures, but for the most part, it's better than it ever has been. And if we can equip them with a safe machinery, for example, hands-free operations, or machinery that doesn't require a lot of physical input, I think we have a first start to keeping the crews safe and operating more efficiently.
And maybe unpacking that a little bit more, if you're out looking for work, nothing like a growing industry to offer opportunity. So from someone who shows up, green, on their first day, what does the training process and pipeline look like? And then second, if you could elaborate on, what a possible trajectory might be, or trajectories in terms of how you could grow from, your first day on the job to, wherever you might be 5 years down the line, something like that.
That's a unique question, because every organization is going to have a different ability and capabilities to scale their current workforce. If that, we have very few things that are industry standard. I think most of our organizations have had to make their own processes and make their own ways. And so there's not a lot of templates that these organizations that are actually doing the work have for growth. And so it's a lot of reinventing, or not, there's not much reinventing the wheel. They're having to figure stuff out as they go along. So I think that that's still a current challenge.
Yeah. And in terms of then where folks might be coming from, I mean, something that I know, I think, we talked about it at New York Geo, and I know others have in the space have commented on and written about, quite effectively, is the transferability of skills from other industries like oil, gas, and water drilling into geothermal. There, I wonder if you could comment on, the consistencies, the similarities, how transferable it is, what adaptations are required. But really, I think the bottom line, though, is that these are not separate disciplines. These are maybe cousins, maybe close cousins, but you're kind of all in the same line of work.
I think that's absolutely right. The geothermal drilling industry, as far as from the heating and cooling aspect, has been really built by the traditional water well drillers. And some of the larger organizations found their start in either water well drilling or environmental drilling. So it's unique now that we're starting to see some people focused just on geothermal drilling. But most of the drillers around the country that cover small pockets here and there, they're your traditional family-owned water well drilling companies that are still doing kind of the groundwork for geothermal.
Yeah, no, that's great. And how about, from a geographic kind of distribution standpoint? I mean, some areas like, in where you're headquartered in and around Austin, there's a lot of folks. Other places a bit more rural, maybe the labor pool can be differently configured. I wonder if you could tell us about your experience with, what barriers you run into in unique geographies, how you've sought to overcome them, and because I'm pretty sure, you're not driving around in your truck from Texas to California to Connecticut every week, or at least I hope not. And so, how are you at Republic? How do you handle all that?
Well, at Republic Drill Co., doing the drilling ourselves and hiring the drillers is not one of our problems to solve for, because we are just selling the equipment and supporting the people who are doing the drillings. And so we get feedback from a nationwide audience, but it is still very challenging to find uh, to find local work where you go, because it's if the work is transient, that job might not be there in the future. So I think it's important that we continue to find ways to make this sustainable and consistent for people to invest their careers in.
Yeah, and that's maybe a final point is how much the current pace of the work of the jobs and then its trajectory influences your planning, your investment, your hiring. Like what does the future look like to you based on how you think the industry is doing now?
We're quite heavily invested into the future of geothermal, from a support network to a sales network, and investing in machinery to meet the needs. But it's an interesting topic because my family's been involved with it since the late 90s. So it's not a secret to us that it's a very common sense approach to provide heating and cooling. And in places like Texas, where people might say, "Oh, it's not as effective here or effective there," well, they're not true statements. They're kind of unvalidated statements. It may be something that someone has heard from somebody and passed on to somebody else. But if a project is engineered right, it's effective in most climates.
Great. Any other thoughts on this topic that we didn't cover that you might want to mention? Things you're excited about, things you're concerned about, or just any other interesting odds and ends.
I think we look at the labor challenge of this, but if you talk to some of the owner operators in the industry, access to affordable capital is also a barrier for them to invest in new machinery. I mean, you have small businesses investing 800 to at least $1 million per asset, if not more, to continue to scale their organizations, and the cost of capital can be quite high to acquire funding for that.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that with this, which is, it's um, pretty hard to think of an industry or a sector that's more like, in America by Americans, with American-made products. I mean, this is as homegrown as it gets, and any growth that returns that capital and its benefits to Americans and to the U.S. economy. I mean, am I right?
That's a very great point as well. And one of the things we even communicate within our own team is that when somebody's drill is not operating, and from a service perspective, we understand that one drill rig probably feeds at least three families, if not more, from the production work that it does. And those are families all over the country that they depend on the job, they depend on the machine to be running. And so we take it very personal that supporting the industry is not just supporting that machine and that company, but there's quite a few people that rely on that asset to be operating for their own livelihood.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Well, Colt, we're gonna transition, but before we do, I'm gonna make note that last month in Albany at NYGeo, you guys very graciously gave me a Republic Drill T-shirt and hat, which I have been wearing, and I don't yet have any gear from any of the other panelists, but I wanted to disclose this up front in case there's concern. I will wear whatever any of y'all send me. Just be advised, it probably is not going to help you very much from a recruiting standpoint. I don't think me walking around with your stuff inspires anything, but just so you know, it's gotten some good use at the gym and on the jogging trail already.
I appreciate that. One of the challenges in this industry, there's not a lot of brands that transcend the industry and that kind of speak for all drillers or all people involved. And so one of our goals with Republic Drill Co. is to be a brand that represents our industry well and tells the story of the sacrifices made from the men and women who have built this industry.
Great. Well, thanks, Colt. We're going to move on to Courtney, but stick around in case something down your alley comes up. So Courtney Lull from Midwest Geothermal, Chief Sales Officer. Courtney, welcome.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what you do and about Midwest Geothermal and where you're based.
Sure. So name Midwest Geothermal, right? We are based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but we are an installing contractor and we serve 48 states here in the US. So we have drilled almost 8 million bore foot at this point. We have drill crews that have traveled to Los Angeles, up into the Washington state, all the way over to the East Coast, up into Massachusetts, down the East Coast, and everywhere in between. So we are solely focused on the geothermal market, have been for 17 years, and really try and serve the industry as aggressively and as openly as we can. So I'm excited to talk about this, particularly because we at Midwest have started our own Department of Labor approved apprenticeship program to help with exactly this topic. So very excited to hear about this.
Yeah, well, why don't we start with that? Tell us about the program, what it is, its origins, what drove you to it, and then honestly, the mechanics to me are very interesting. So like, what does this on a day-to-day basis mean in terms of what you're doing and what it looks like?
Absolutely. So I did want to highlight a couple of the questions that you'd actually asked Colt that'll kind of lead us into this. But one of them was the trajectory for an employee. So our current president started on the lowest rung of the totem pole here. He started in the field grouting boreholes and has been here 17 years and is now the president of the company. This industry is incredible for its opportunity to foster growth. If you're willing to learn and try something new, work outside, the sky is the limit for anyone in this industry to try and take something on or become just invaluable, whether that's the grouter or all the way up. So it is pretty cool to be able to see that kind of growth in the industry. So the program for us started, honestly, out of a need. There really isn't necessarily an apprenticeship program or many offered, particularly those that cover the entire US. So for us, it really started out of wanting to foster good growth, long-term sustainable growth for our employees. What we do is not easy, especially as Midwest Geothermal. As I said, the name is a little misleading anymore since we serve the whole US, but our employees travel and travel quite a bit. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to educate them and train them in a way that was sustainable and safe so that everybody can just have a lot of fun, do a good job, and come home safely every day. So for us, it was really born out of that. And then honestly, the incentives helped as well, right? That part of the contingency within current legislation is to have registered apprentices. So it really helped kind of foster that growth. We had started it, but kind of accelerated it based on current incentives available to help with apprenticeship percentage requirements. But for us, it was really more, how can we best serve the industry? Well, we can best serve the industry by appropriately training and having a good registered training program for our guys.
And how how do you, what kind of channels do you use to get the word out? What types of groups, populations, skill sets? I mean, where do you look to find people for the apprentice program and otherwise?
Yes, everywhere, anywhere we can get access and have an ear to listen to us, whether that's high school career days. A lot of our employees come from word of mouth. The culture that we cultivate here at Midwest and the way that we treat our employees has fostered incredible growth just from word of mouth and referrals from our current employees. But we do invest time into going to career fairs at any high school within a reasonable driving distance of our office, just to educate them about what opportunities there are here. The best part of what we do is it's really cool. The worst part, or the hardest part, is that it's invisible once it's done. So unless you can point it out and then educate those high school students or show them a little bit, even have little remote control excavators they can play with, or they're sitting there at the career fair just to get them excited about what it is that we do, is a big deal. That even if they don't come join us in the field, maybe they look at another opportunity with another career choice that also touches the industry, might get them excited in another way.
And so right out of high school, this is something you can do in lieu of college or whatever. And then do you find your apprentices or your targets are, high school grads, or do people show up later in their 20s or maybe coming from other careers? I mean, how does that distribute?
Absolutely. We see from high school students all the way up to maybe this is their second or third career that they're looking to kind of restart things and looking for new opportunities. I mean, we have 20, 30-year age gaps in these apprentices, and it's honestly just because they're excited about the opportunities. The pay is great. The opportunities are limitless in this industry. So they get really excited about what they can do and how they can grow. To Colt's point, one of these drill rigs does impact multiple families at a time. Multiple employees are affected by that one rig running. So to see the opportunities afforded and then again the referral basis from existing employees that are excited to share that opportunity with others is great, and couldn't speak higher about this industry and what its possibilities are.
And maybe to pun intended, because I'm a middle-aged dad, to drill down a little bit into that, and maybe to unpack the example of going from grouter to president. Like, so clearly that's someone who showed up every day ready to roll. But what else goes into it when you can have that kind of verticality in a career and in an industry? Like, and not just that example, but just in general, like if you could tell me more about, how something like that happens.
To be honest, the most successful people that we see come out of the apprenticeship programs are the ones that can sustain that excitement and keep a bit of the awe of what we do. It is pretty amazing. I've done this for a long time, and I know Mike and Colt and I have all talked about this a little bit, that it's still pretty cool to see these drill rigs that have a 20-foot stick be able to drill 800 feet down in the ground, and to understand how to do that, to be not necessarily even ambitious enough, but driven enough to understand that different geologies are going to require maybe a little different drilling technique, or they're going to have to learn and educate themselves, which really only time can do. You can't learn all of the geologies, unfortunately, in a school or in a classroom setting, but taking the time and really showing some initiative and passion allows that kind of growth and trajectory. We have seen people start early and move up very quickly just because they get excited about that they see a new geology and they're excited, not necessarily intimidated about what opportunity that could be. That and competitiveness. When you're drilling geo, it's all about production. How quickly can we go from top to bottom, out, back onto the next one? So to see that kind of drive and competitive nature too on a site is pretty cool. And that's when you start to see some real growth too.
That's great. I mean, it's a really heartening story at a time when you look more broadly across the economy, and it seems like what opportunities there are come with lots of strings attached, and there are real limits in terms of mobility, or there's high barriers in terms of the types of training and experience needed. I mean, this sounds like almost something out of like a Charles Dickens novel where you kind of, you hop off the train and you show up and, you can start going. And really it's only, the more experience you get, meaning the more demand and the more growth in the industry, the more you'd be able to grow your career, support your family, be part of your community and so forth. I mean, am I oversimplifying or overstating it?
You're not really. I mean, when we look at, even more rural employees or employees that are coming into this and finding geo as the new opportunity, some of these people are learning or are earning money that are generational wealth type. They're earning an incredible living for them and their family. And it's part of even our apprenticeship program and even our culture here at Midwest is that we really take the employee full circle. Not only do we want to give them the skill set to be able to drill a hole, right? Or to excavate a trench or do the actual hands-on things, but we also want to teach them about long-term wealth management and how to take this incredible opportunity and translate that into long-term success for them, and not just the coolest, shiniest truck that day.
Yeah. Well, let's delve a little bit into the policy space because it sounds like keeping this going, allowing it to continue to grow. I think really true for all our panelists. Hinges on continued interest in geothermal heating and cooling writ large. And in the first two webinars, we really shone a spotlight on the way it can, save money over time, the way it confers benefits to the grid and electric utilities, rural co-ops in particular. Key on that are, incentives that are out there and drivers. I mean, this would not be unique by any means to figure out ways to use policy to drive demand and support growth. We've certainly been doing that with tax credits, federal tax credits that date back, years and years and years. These are not new things by any means, even if they've had different incarnations as Congresses come and go. What's your expectation and what's your sort of hope for what the future policy support looks like, given that, I think what you've underscored is, who are the beneficiaries of these policies? Who really gains from it? And it's clear that, these are everyday working Americans that have a chance, from high school kids to people on career number 3 or 4. I'm kind of answering the question for you. I do that sometimes. Maybe put it in your own words and disagree with me if I've got it wrong.
No, the best part about making sure that policy matches the excitement around this industry is that there's nothing more energy independent or resilient than utilizing the energy under our feet. I can't outsource it because I have to do it here. I have to have drill rigs that are supported by US companies. I have to have employees here. I have to have material here. I can't really outsource a lot of, if any, of this installation. So it is crucial to get everyone's support from all the way up to all the way down to make sure that we are continuing to support these families that rely on this industry and it becomes so intrinsic to its success.
Terrific. Well said. Well said. We're going to transition now to the next panelist, but stick around, Courtney, if you would, and we'll see if we before we close can have a little cross panelist discussion. But thank you very much, for these insights, and also good to have a fellow Midwesterner here on the program today.
We'll send you some swag.
Okay, good. Yeah, I shamelessly will accept and wear it. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, we are ready for you. I hope you're ready for us. I'm wondering if we could start just with who you are and tell us a little bit about Loop Tech and where you're based and just sort of set the stage.
My name is Mike Toll. I'm the CEO of Loop Tech Geothermal, based out of Sanger, Texas, which is north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Loop Tech was founded in 1984, so we've been around a long time. And worked not quite as many states as Courtney, not a competition, right? But we stopped counting at about 30. And over the years, have had hopefully a good impact on the industry as a whole. I share a lot of the sentiments that Courtney and Colt expressed with the opportunities to provide good paying careers, not just jobs, but careers for individuals. And I don't really think that folks see the amount of impact that our industry has on multiple different trades. So I think it's important to recognize that.
Yeah, let's build on that. Tell me about the spread, the different types of trades, how you've seen and experienced that in terms of the real breadth of who's involved in this industry.
So The hot button as of late has been drilling, like Cole expressed. If we could hire a driller with every rig that we purchased, it would be easier to scale, obviously. That takes a lot of support personnel, a lot of support equipment. Majority of all that equipment, if not all of it, is made here in the United States. But to start at the very beginning with work that's done by design teams and the staffs that they have, so you can start adding households that each of those rigs add support to. From the design team, the drilling, the loop installers obviously is a huge part of what we do. You've got the tie-in or the headering crews, the equipment operators, again, additional equipment that most people think geothermal drilling, they don't realize how much equipment is purchased and operated and serviced out of this industry. Interior piping, scopes vary across the North America. We do a lot of interior piping work that historically and in a lot of places are done with steel. So we're seeing a little bit of that change and go to HDPE, which just helps support the people that are trained in pipe fusion and trained in installing geothermal. Material manufacturers, grout, pipe, the specialty fittings. This is all US made product. And again, feeds a much broader spectrum of people than what we realize just on the surface. So I think it's important to realize that and support those other sectors of our industry as a whole.
Yeah, and I think sometimes what maybe gets lost in the shuffle is the multiplier effect, where you have an industry that relies on, well, I should say, where you have a sort of made in America industry that relies on lots of other made in America industries as suppliers and as partners. Then growth of that industry means lots of other made in America industries grow as well. It really has a sort of geometric impact across the economy when you see something like geothermal heating and cooling continue to grow and even boom. There's lots of beneficiaries well beyond just the guy with a drill.
Absolutely. And we're hearing a lot of very encouraging commitments from different types of manufacturers, equipment manufacturers and suppliers about investing in the United States, made in America. And there's so much buzz across the world, and I think especially from American manufacturers, of how do we ramp this up? How do we expand this? How do we scale it? And we all have struggles every day in scaling. We've got to have work to train drillers. We've got to have work to keep that consistency flowing. And historically, that's been an issue. That's been a tough battle for us to face. We're extremely busy 8 or 10 months out of the year, or 6 or 8 months out of the year, and then there's a lull, there's a downtime, and we need to close that gap and that lull and that downtime. The other thing that it does is, if we can do that and we can have more consistent work, we can also control better the cost of goods, the cost of the product that we're selling, and the end cost to the consumer, which is just going to feed on itself.
Yeah, so I mean, if I could extrapolate from that, tell me if this is true, where this is a product, this is a technology where once installed, it's going to save the homeowner or the business owner or the college campus or whatever money from an operational standpoint. And then the more it grows, the lower that CapEx figure is going to be, and the more savings are going to abound to all involved. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely. And again, drilling is just a portion of this technology. We're going back in some K through 12 schools, a lot of them in the Austin area. Dallas is just starting to see this, where they're having equipment changeouts, unit changeouts. And as this happens, these are systems that are 25, 30 years old. They're still in operation, still functioning. The actual geothermal part of the water portion of this system has outlived the equipment that's in the building.
Mm.
This lasts for decades. And to Cole's point, geothermal will work anywhere. It just has to be designed properly.
Yeah.
There's a large difference in how systems are designed between Texas, for example, and Michigan. So it's going to continue to grow, and the number of people involved in it to service this industry is going to continue to grow.
You know, and you hit on something I think we're actually gonna look at in the next webinar, which would be you know, specific projects and what it looks like. And you know, when it comes to schools, that idea of longevity, when you pair it then with the cost savings, you know, operationally, that's more money that school can spend on its students. And you know, to have something that's long lasting, I mean, we all have, like, for me, there's a guy at my high school who, like, I thought was ancient when I went there in the early 90s, and he's still there and he looks the same. Like, there's always that guy. And I feel like the geothermal rig is basically like in that same status of it's just there and associated with the school for generations, and can really contribute to then, you know, what that school's meant to do and its primary purpose.
A lot of the retrofit projects that we've seen in K through 12, this is information coming from the different districts, save as much as 40% on their cost of operation. Over 25 or 30 years, that adds up to a lot of money, and a lot of money that's freed up for that district to use to do what is intended, which is educate children. So it's, we're starting to see the long lasting effects of it, and how this is not put it in and then you never go back again. It may be 20, 25 years, you'll be back and you'll be servicing these systems again. But it's very exciting. And to Courtney's point, the amount of passion that's in this industry all across, from the design to commissioning of these systems, the amount of passion it is there when people see how efficient geothermal is and how it has such of an impact and a benefit to the people that are in it and also the consumers. That passion just continues to grow.
So, Mike, here's a question for you, and this was not on the questions we kind of circulated early to prep. But if you're king for a day, what are some things you'd want to do right off the bat that you think would help the geothermal heating and cooling industry?
Education. And when I say education, I'm talking about the promotion and the education of consumers, education of anyone that is a candidate for geothermal. There are so many myths to geothermal in its effectiveness, its applicability to different areas of the country, how it's used. I think that educating the public would probably be the biggest impact.
Mm-hmm. So making sure there's greater awareness that this is an option as opposed to just traditional HVAC setup.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, anything else before we, Jocelyn's been waiting patiently, and someone had to go last, and we certainly was not in order, in any particular order, but anything, Mike, before we go, and we might be able to bring everyone back at the end for a little discussion, but
Just to repeat Courtney's sentiments, you know, we invest a lot of money and time in the people that work here in training. It's not a short process, and we have a very high retention rate for people that apply themselves. We've seen people come out of warehouse work that say, I just want an opportunity. We see people that come out of the oil and gas industry that say, I want some more consistency in my life from my family.
mm-hmm.
And I think that this industry can provide it.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Jocelyn, thank you for joining us today. So Jocelyn Lai, everyone, is the CEO and co-founder of Bedrock Energy, a technology company developing drilling automation and subsurface AI technologies to make geoconstruction faster, safer, more tech-enabled, and more consistent across any of the variations in subsurface conditions. Now, did I get that right, Jocelyn?
That's right. Thank you for the introduction, Scott, and for having me as part of this panel with a lot of extremely experienced geo-industry veterans.
I appreciate it. You wrote that one for me, so I was hoping I wouldn't screw it up just by getting it out there. But really glad you could join us. And let's start with kind of picking up a little bit on what we talked about with Mike. So what parts of the workforce do you think are bottlenecks or challenges for sustaining and even increasing growth going forward?
I would say I echo a lot of what was discussed here, especially with Courtney's message around the work that Midwest does on drilling apprenticeships, which is that drillers are a bottleneck. I believe the stat is that the average age historically for geo drillers in the past decade or so has been over 50 years old. And it just means that training a new generation is not happening as fast as we would like. And I think there's so many elements of that. Public policy is a piece. The efforts of experienced companies like, Courtney's and Mike's are also a piece where you go out and you pound pavement in job fairs and in high schools and technical colleges. But all of that also should be buoyed by technology as well. And so at Bedrock, what we focus on is that construction technology, especially on the software and sensors side, can also be brought in to make the training and therefore the expansion of the driller workforce easier and faster to expand the people that we have out there drilling and installing these geothermal systems across the country.
That's great. And maybe if you could elaborate a little more on specific skills, roles where you sense demand is highest or would maybe become increasingly vital to fill, in terms of looking forward with a positive growth trajectory?
Yeah, there's certainly the skills that are required for the core geosystem installation, which is to say the drilling, the subsurface component. And so the main skill there is drilling and then the installation and the completion of those heat exchanger bores. There's also, however, what Mike mentioned, which is the job opportunities and the job demand for the skills in the surface portion, so to speak, which is installing the HVAC equipment, installing the mechanical pumps and tanks that connect to your geothermal heat exchange bores, and also doing the trenching and the lateral construction from that geothermal energy asset underground into the building. So there's this entire value chain from subsurface to building that has a myriad of jobs that are all really important roles that really just put steel or plastic, as it might be, in the ground for American energy infrastructure expansion, but also just real estate construction and urban and suburban construction expansion.
And as you think about different building types, different geographies, how much does that add to the challenge in terms of attracting people, in terms of developing skills? I think what we've heard from everyone is that geothermal is everywhere, and even where it's not, it could be there, provided it's designed. How do you confront different project sizes, types, different geographies, other characteristics too, just from project to project, in your planning and in your thinking about your workforce and whatnot?
Yeah, there's basically two, I think, types of variation that drive the most uncertainty when you go from geography to geography. The first type of variation is the subsurface condition, right? Soil and rock, hydrology, these things change sometimes not only city to city and state to state, but sometimes even within a city. And even within the same county, you can have variations in how much groundwater flow there is and where do you hit that groundwater flow, how deep the unconsolidated rock is before you hit really firm bedrock, so to speak. What are the other types of soil and rock that you hit across different layers? And the deeper you go, the more variation there is. So that kind of variation does create some uncertainty on how you drill in that area, which then requires training. So I imagine, Courtney's team, which is sending drillers across the country, is probably doing a decent amount of training on what are the different subsurface conditions that you can encounter, and what do you do when you encounter those variations, right? So that's on the subsurface side. On the surface side, the variation would be around different building types have different building energy consumption needs. They have different design profiles for the HVAC system or the mechanical system that sits in the building or in that district. And on that front, what you often have is that engineering firms and contractors need experience on the different kinds of mechanical systems that might be specified, might be designed for different kinds of buildings. So what strategies we bring to bear are kind of to, I think, Mike's point, education, right? On the building side of things, the more those building designs can have case studies from across the country so that engineers and contractors can see what's already been done and feel comfortable and confident, the more there are templates for really good best practice mechanical designs and electrical designs, the more the correct and easiest and most cost-effective design can be replicated over and over again across cities and across states around the United States. So education is a really big piece on systematizing, standardizing, and scaling up mechanical designs on the surface. On the subsurface side, one of the things that Bedrock does in that drilling automation software play is something that we actually borrow significantly from oil and gas. About 60% of my team comes from oil and gas. And so they're very used to these kinds of drilling algorithms existing in the oil and gas world, which is where technology can enable, no matter what kind of subsurface variation there is, ranging from Massachusetts all the way to Arizona and California, all of those variations are things that can be demystified if a technology system is reading the ground while you drill. And so those telemetry systems are something that my team has utilized for decades in oil and gas and has reinvented for geo, which is that while you drill, you actually read all the variations in your groundwater flow, in the soil and rock conditions, the different kinds of hardness, the different pressure gradients that you encounter, and use that to drill much more easily and in a much more automated fashion so that the training and learning curve for new drillers doesn't have to be as difficult and as long when they're going from state to state and learning all the different variations that they might encounter during the drilling process. So that strategy really helps us to collapse the variation in conditions and therefore enable smoother workforce training and smoother workforce expansion.
Terrific, terrific. And as we wind down, I think I wanted to pivot a little bit back into the policy space, which we've dipped into, because obviously, and I think everyone here needs no convincing. You have a technology, an approach to providing something fundamental to our modern way of life and heating and cooling. And you have a way of doing it in a long-lasting, super cost-effective way that confers all kinds of other benefits, whether it's to the grid or to local workforces, to mobile, more regional workforces that can pull in from other industries like oil and gas, and put people to work. I mean, it's not for nothing that we wanted to stand this up and talk about this today, because there's such a rich amount of information that just seems ripe for sustained policy support. This is a good thing, and it can do more and give back more to the country and to our energy system and to our workforce, to our economy. As you've been engaging, in the policy space lately. What do you think is maybe the most important thing that policymakers should know about this industry and you know that helps justify continued support from Congress and otherwise?
I think the most important thing is that the private sector and customers need to see consistency and stability in the market. And the number one thing that federal policy does to contribute to a really sustained, consistent, and business-friendly ecosystem for making investments in technology, in workforce training, in capital equipment is the tax credit consistency, because those things actually provide a long cycle, a long time frame where private sector companies know that we can make those investments. $1 million drill rig is a very long-term investment, right? You could be using that for decades, and you're not going to make that investment if the economic certainty of the industry, of the sector, is not very stable or sure. I think that's the number one thing. I think that there's probably a few other things related to at the state level or the federal level sharing a lot of those best practices, those playbooks and those case studies around systems so that drillers, contractors, and engineers across the country can see what those best practices are and basically copy them and scale them to more and more regions. These are all ways where everybody from federal to state to local can really play a role in nurturing a really healthy ecosystem for companies like Colt's company and my company Bedrock to go make those investments at the supply chain and R&D and capital level.
Terrific, terrific. Well, thanks, Jocelyn, and thanks to all our panelists, to Colt and to Courtney and to Mike. Thanks again to Mission Geo and to IGSPA and to GeoExchange for bringing us together. I feel like when you have such a good story to tell in this day and age, it's incumbent upon you to retell it and tell it in different ways and get the word out. So grateful that we could do this today. And of course, we'll take a lot of the ideas and concepts and facts offered here and continue to disperse them in the policy space and elsewhere, all in support of geothermal heating and cooling. And so really appreciate it. And we were going to reorganize and come back, I think, with at least one more of these on special projects and what they look like and talking about it from that perspective. But we'll give everyone 7 minutes back before your next meeting or call. Everyone's busy. Really appreciate y'all could join, and thanks so much.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.